Did you see the stylish?
Welcome to the Young IPA podcast. I'm James, this is Pete.
G'day everyone.
It is episode 130 and it is the 10th of October. Big show coming up.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking to Tim Wilson MP, coming back on the show, the member for Goldstein, Liberal Party MP. He was at the Hong Kong protests earlier this week.
Yep.
So we're going to be talking to him about the scene that he saw, and also because he started to get a lot of, people going at him because he once tweeted something about Occupy Melbourne. We're just going to break down why Hong Kong protesters aren't the same as Occupy Melbourne protesters. We're also going to be talking to Vale Sloane from Atlas. Now, Atlas is an organisation maybe a lot of our listeners and viewers are not aware of, but they do incredible work around the world helping people get out of poverty. So we're just going to be learning a bit about what Atlas does and what some of the recent success stories are. We're also going to be talking about Extinction Rebellion. We've got a really great Heroes and Villains segment. We're going to be talking about Justin Trudeau again, which I love. Pete, anything you're looking forward to?
I'm absolutely looking forward to the Vale Sloane interview. Like, I've already listened to it because I was there.
Yep.
But it was if you're like worried about the world or anything, listen to this. It's completely inspiring and it's fantastic.
Yeah, awesome. But we'll start off with the big story in the world this week. And Pete, we've been doing this podcast for coming up on 3 years now. We've been doing it for a while. And
2.5.
I've got to say, I've never been more happy with a 1 hour lead-off story than I am this week because my worlds are combining.
Yeah,
we're
exactly
talking
right.
politics and we're also talking NBA.
Exactly. You're a basketball nuffy.
Yeah, I know I never bring it up with you, Pete, but I'm actually a big basketball fan.
Yeah.
So if people don't know the story, so the Houston Rockets general manager, basically the guy that controls the Houston Rockets' big decisions, tweeted out support of the Hong Kong protests. And this did not go down well with the NBA. He was, an apology was quickly put out there. The Houston Rockets team owner distanced himself from the tweets. The NBA distanced themselves from the tweets. And the reason that they did this is because the NBA-China relationship is worth $4 billion to
I didn't know
the
that was that
NBA as of last year. It's only going to get bigger as esports take off, which is, and 800 million people in China watch NBA programming TV, on-pro TV, digital media, or smartphones last year, which is 2.5 times the population of the US. So, Pete, because I could talk about this and then the NBA for literally 2.5 days without stop, I'll just give you a chance to get your takes out before I come in.
Well, so that happened, and obviously he got a number of sponsors left the Rockets, including the very aptly named China state broadcaster CCTV.
Yes.
How good is that?
I thought it was like, so they're not being broadcast on streets anymore? It's like, oh no, that's actually the broadcaster.
Exactly right. Very apt name. But we saw that. We also saw, the big thing for me was the guy, what's his name? Silverman.
Adam Silver. He's the commissioner of the NBA.
That's right.
Big
so
boss.
he came out, and this is the guy, as I'm sure you're going to say in a sec, who is a big social warrior guy, social justice guy.
Yeah.
So go through that.
Okay, so this is literally the league that 2 years ago moved the All-Star game out of Charlotte because the state had brought in laws that people, that made transsexuals go to bathrooms dependent on what their birth gender was. Like, they moved the NBA All-Star game out of that city because they wanted it to take a stand.
Yeah.
But one general manager puts out a tweet in support of Hong Kong. And you know what? We don't really get into social things. We're just about basketball.
Yeah.
Let's just play basketball.
He goes, what are the enduring strengths of the NBA? This is Silver. What are the enduring strengths of the NBA is our diversity of views, backgrounds, ethnicities, genders, and religion. Well, I got news for you, mate. Yeah. That is not a value of the CCP.
Yeah, exactly.
In China.
I also saw Adam Silver today, because there's been so much backlash from the NBA's perspective to the NBA for their statements. Adam Silver put out a statement today. However, the NBA will not put itself in a position of regulating what players, employees, and team owners say or will not say on these issues. Now, Adam, if I could refer you back to what you did 3 days ago, you might realize something about your own actions there.
Yeah, exactly right. No, it's completely hypocritical. We should point out as well that friend of the show, Andrew Bogut, who we've had on the program before, quite a while ago now, also tweeted out, thanks Daryl Murray, so that's the guy, Maury even, that's the guy from Houston Rockets, for taking some of the NMSL's abuse I was flooded with. Enjoy the next few weeks anytime you post anything. Now, apparently NMSL means your mother is dead in Chinese, so that's the name that he gives to critics from China. So
because I assume a lot of them would have tweeted that at him because he's been quite vocal on the issue.
That's right, and he's also been vocal on Sun Yang, the drug cheat. So he's drug cheat Chinese swimmer. So he's been in there.
I'm glad you went back in to make sure we got troll tweets from China.
Yeah. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like when the corporate, like everyone's got morals until you like put a dollar sign on it.
Yeah.
And because like the NBA can be like, look, I care about freedom of expression to the $4 billion mark, and then I don't. Yeah. Like, you know, in 20 years' time when their kids ask them, so what was Hong Kong? And you can say like, oh, it's the freest city in the world. It was a beacon of hope. It was a beacon of the free markets. You know, could we have done anything to save it before the Chinese army moved in? No, but I did fire a guy who tried.
Yeah, exactly.
I fired a guy who tried to do it, and he's never able to get a job in the NBA again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, the other part of it is, like, the Houston Rockets, the team that Daryl Morey is the general manager of, is the most important team in NBA-China relationships because, like, that was the team that had Yao Ming, the 7'6" Chinese star, the best player that's ever come out of China. Like, it could not have come from a worse team. And already the NBA is, like, trying to market the Brooklyn Nets because they're owned by people that invested in Alibaba. It's like, oh, maybe you guys can pivot to this team to go for.
Yeah,
like,
exactly
it is disastrous for the NBA, but if you want to be social justice warriors, this is a huge social justice issue.
You get on your high horse, you tell everyone else how to behave. When it comes to the crunch, you are absolute cowards. It just gets me every time.
Exactly. I could talk about this for literally 4.5 hours, so we should probably move on to another topic.
We talk about it a little bit more with Tim Wilson later in the show.
So basically, Nikola Jokic is passing out of the post this season. I'm a bit worried, but...
So are you still watching NBA now?
I will... Yeah, look, this is a terrible time in NBA history.
Yeah.
I will watch literally every single game.
Okay, so Bolt, you know, he's not convinced.
Take the LA Lakers season total under. It's an absolute lock.
Okay. All right. Do that, people. All right. The other story this week in Australia and around the world is that Extinction Rebellion have been at it again. They've been disrupting road traffic in Sydney this morning. Yesterday, a bloke in Brisbane erected a hammock from the Story Bridge for 6 hours. And in Melbourne this morning, a whopping 35 protesters blockaded Gibbs and Hoddle Street, a drizzly.
And if you're not in Melbourne, like Hoddle Street, that is a big street to lock down. Like
it's a big street.
That is a lot of traffic that got held up.
It is a lot of traffic for 35 protesters and a drizzly cold morning in Melbourne today. So it's funny that a number of those numbers fell. We also saw people overseas protesting. James is going to show you a little bit later a very good video from London, I believe.
I was a bit worried there, and then I realised that I do know what that is.
I thought I ran that by you. Anyway, so that's the story. I mean, we all know what's going on with Extinction Rebellion. Last week, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton suggested that scrapping...
Sorry, just a lack of attendance thing. One thing I wanted to say, so people in Melbourne this week were planning a Swarm for Survival on Wednesday, an Extinction Rave on Friday night, and a nudie parade for Saturday. Why are the things they do always fun?
Yeah.
Like, no one's saying like, hey, let's clean up a beach and take photos of that. It's always like, nah, let's party.
Yeah. Or do a nudie run.
Yeah, let's do the thing that I'd be doing anyway tonight, but in the morning in front of cameras.
Yeah, exactly. They should, I don't
want to do anything hard.
Yeah, exactly. They should, for climate, get, plastic out of the bay or something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, the Dutton thing.
So he suggested we should scrap welfare payments for climate change activists who break the law. Now, I don't think requirements around what welfare should change based on a person's political views. But I think the key thing about this is Dutton's got this thing wrong because these aren't welfare recipients. Climate protesters are rich.
Yeah.
They're upper middle class. They're an upper middle class death cult, Brendan O'Neill said during the week in Spike, which is a terrific article and you should check it out. But that's the thing. Climate protest is for rich white people.
Oh, there'd be definitely some welfare recipients in the climate protest.
Don't kill my narrative, James.
But I'm just saying, yes, like the ones we see are definitely well off.
Yeah.
But for the Peter Dutton thing, like the first time I read this, I thought it was a parody.
Okay.
Like I thought, like that is what someone would say if they were trying to make fun of what Peter Dutton would say.
Yeah.
It's like he would cut off welfare recipients. Like he might actually be Snidely Whiplash at this point.
No, he did say
but
that.
so the government can just go around punishing people for having different political opinions to them. Like were any of the pro-life abortion protesters, were any of their welfare recipients being punished for, going out and protesting abortion?
Exactly right. Wait till the shoe's on the other foot.
Yeah, exactly. Like when Labor and Green get in power, it's like, well, you guys were doing it, so now, anyone that's protesting for freedom of speech or against 18C, like their welfare recipients are gone too. Yeah.
Exactly right. Now, I had one final point on this.
Okay.
I live in Brunswick. My commute...
Hippie community?
Very greeny environmentalist community. Now, my commute to work has been absolutely untouched by these protests.
Yeah.
So when are these people going to block Sydney Road, Brunswick?
Yeah.
Or the mighty Upfield line? Do you know what I mean? Like it's always, Hoddle Street or, Spring Street. Just a point.
Just a point.
Haven't noticed any...
Pete arguing for him being late to work every day. I wonder why.
It'll be a good excuse.
I wonder why Pete wants to be late to work.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So I think you wanted to also talk about Stand Up for Nuclear.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So Stand Up for Nuclear, October the 20th. It's a great event being run by David Limbrick from the
Friend of the show.
Liberal Democrats, friend of the show. Check it out. It's just Google Stand Up for Nuclear October 20 Melbourne.
Yeah, if you really wanted to stand up for the environment and cut emissions, then you want to embrace nuclear energy.
Exactly right.
All
Thank you.
Let's move on to our heroes and villains segments. So this is when we praise people that are standing up for liberty and punish those who stand against it.
Yeah.
Now, Pete,
we don't actually punish them. But
well, we make fun of them.
Yeah.
And isn't that punishment enough?
Just for
it's punishment in China.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason Winnie the Pooh's banned.
We will be censored in China.
Well, hopefully.
That's my dream.
It'll be good for PR. Not in China, but elsewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Pete, your hero.
Okay, so my hero this week is sort of the opposite to the NBA. You'd sort, the direct opposite. They're the creators of South Park.
The NHL. No, okay.
Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of South Park, who are libertarians, I might add, not just on this issue. Now, the most recent episode of South Park, second show of their 23rd season, was called Banned in China and features clips.
BAND. Like, the title for them was BAND, but obviously banned in China.
That's right. That's a good point, actually. That's a good point.
It's a pun.
That's right. And featured clips such as this.
I want to get away from that farm more than anything. But it's not worth living in a world where China controls my country's art.
什么？你竟敢看不起我？
I don't care how many people you have.
All right. Now, obviously, that ridicules the Chinese government. The episode also includes references to Xi Jinping looking like Winnie the Pooh, which he absolutely does.
It's uncanny.
And it's got a quote in it from one character saying, you've got to lower your ideals of freedom if you want to suck on the warm teat of China. So obviously that's what the NBA's been doing this week. Now, this was completely wiped from the Chinese internet. They've got a version of Twitter, a version of YouTube, a version of Facebook, completely wiped, even from fan sites. In retaliation, Parker and Stone put a mock apology on their Twitter on Monday that went like this. Like the NBA, we welcome the Chinese censors into our homes and into our hearts. We too love money more than freedom and democracy. Xi doesn't look like Winnie the Pooh at all. Tune into our 300th episode at 10. Long live the great communists
Good plug.
of China. May this autumn's sorghum harvest be bountiful. We good now, China.
South Park are and they continue to be the best.
Yeah.
Like, it was the Danish cartoons, it was Scientology. They are on the right side of every single political issue like this.
And they've got heaps of money in China as well.
Yeah.
Like they'll lose money because of this.
Yeah, exactly.
But they said, you know what, something's more important than money, James.
Yeah, like they did on all those other ones.
What a pair of legends.
All right, my hero isn't particularly a person, but it's Newton's third law of motion, which I had to do a bit of research of, and now I've since forgotten. Science was never my strong point, or maths, which is something we'll be talking about in a bit. But anyway, as Pete alluded to, Extinction Rebellion protests are taking part all over the world, and I want to hone in on the London protest where they wanted to spray fake blood on the Treasury building out of a fire engine, a decommissioned fire engine, and this happened. So as you can see, for the first few seconds, things are going all right if you're listening on this. So they're trying to spray fake blood out of a fire engine. The fire hose becomes a bit too powerful for them, so everyone has just run away as the hose is just spraying fake blood all over the street. Absolutely none of this is getting on the Treasury building at this point. Now people are trying to mass to the hose to stop it running. They're getting sprayed as well. No one's being able to control the hose. It is an absolute loose unit at this point. And the gentleman has given up as well. There's one woman who's still trying, and it's honestly one of the best clips. Hopefully my commentating has given life to it.
Yeah. Well, just imagine Newton's third law of motion.
Yeah.
And then that's
that
what
old
it
chestnut.
is. Yeah.
So anyway, just out of control hose spraying fake blood everywhere except the Treasury building. Now, The Guardian went to bat for the protesters. The Guardian had it under the headline, Extinction Rebellion activists have sprayed 1,800 litres of fake blood on the Treasury's building in Westminster.
I noticed that.
I didn't think it was on.
Yeah.
You could say nearby, or you could say next to, but you can't say on.
Or down the drain right directly next to the building. I love the way it was sort of like it took it seriously, like they had achieved what their aim was. Like,
instead of like,
that's
this
not
is
what
the
happened.
best clip ever.
Yeah, exactly right. The comments underneath that were very funny. I love the way the blokes on the top of it just sort of allow the old guy and the young woman to try and tackle the hose while they sort of watch it. And, litres of poison go down the drain to help the environment.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the whole the protesters didn't live by their own ideals is becoming a bit of a cliche thing. But I just want to point out a diesel-fueled fire engine was driven to the Treasury building to spray 1,800 litres of a liquid that definitely contains drinking water onto a building.
Exactly right.
Swing and a miss.
No,
all right,
no good.
Let us move on to villains. Now, these are the villains of the week, the Howard Peck Villainy Award. Now, Pete, you want to talk about the oppression of maths. maths.
I do want to talk about the oppression of maths. My villain this week is the Ethnic Studies Advisory Committee under the Seattle Public Schools Superintendent. So that is a bit of a tongue twister for you. They published a preliminary math ethnic studies framework document, which describes how maths can oppress people from ethnic minorities. As part of this document, it said Western mathematics is the only legitimate expression of a mathematical identity and intelligence. It goes on to say, who gets to say if an answer is right? What is the process for verifying the truth? Who is smart? Who is not smart? And then it goes on to consider how maths has been used to resist and liberate people from communities of colour from oppression. So there's a few things to unpack here.
Yeah.
Firstly, it's stupid because maths is just maths.
Yeah, yeah. That's a classic, people that have spent their entire life in arts and politics coming to maths. Yeah. Because, in arts and politics, who is right? No one knows. Yeah. But in maths, it's no. 1 + 1 does equal 2.
There's just maths. And the other thing, this goes in my file of people trying to not be racist, but being absolutely and completely racist. Maths isn't Western.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not like a white people thing. It's just maths. So if you think that mathematical truths are for white people over here, that is also completely racist.
Yeah, there was one thing out of this that I did actually like. Sorry, in the ethnic studies framework, there's one theme of history of resistance and liberation. These are themes that people might want to discuss, and it's talking about how the history of resistance and liberation, as defined by ethnic studies, is a stories, places, and people who helped to liberate people and communities of color using math, engineering, and technology. Now that sounds way cooler than regular maths. Yeah. I'd be okay with that subject. I don't like learning about angles. I like learning about catapults.
Yeah, that's good.
I like learning about trebuchets.
Maybe the document wasn't all bad.
Yeah. Trigonometry?
Yeah.
Try projectile missiles. That's how you get me on board.
Well, there you go. But they're still my villain this week.
Yeah, good. So my villain this week is Justin Trudeau. Now, this isn't exactly villainy, but it is just the best. And I want to play this up front. So Justin Trudeau got in a bit of a hot water recently with the old blackface thing. If you missed that. A few times. I think we're up to 4 or 5 now, I
thought it was still on 3, but I could be wrong.
Anyway, the man likes dressing up in blackface. Sorry. At a town hall ahead of the election. Yeah. At a town hall at the upcoming election, a person wanted to ask what's he done to address the fact that he used to dress up in blackface.
Yep.
I'm just going to play the clip in full.
So that didn't answer the question at all. Have you spoken to any African leaders or leaders from the Middle East to apologize for your personal conduct?
I have continued to engage with leaders around the world in a responsible way during an election campaign. My focus is connecting with Canadians, as I was able to tonight. And I was very pleased to see so many of the questions turn to the environment. In all sections, there was a clear contrast between those on stage who don't think we should be fighting climate change and those of us who do. And again, we are the only party with a clear plan to fight climate change.
Literal screeching would have been a better answer than that. Getting on the ground and barking like a dog for 30 seconds would have been a better answer than what he gave. Yeah. That is atrocious.
That is one hell of a pivot. Well, who cares if I'm a racist? Because these guys aren't going to introduce a carbon tax. Come on, mate. That's worse than, No,
but just he so clearly hasn't reached out to anyone. And you could ask what does reaching out even mean? Just calling up a prime minister of an African nation and being like, sorry, mate. But I do I actually will bring this to your attention, Pete. I actually have the written answer they prepared for this that Justin Trudeau pivoted away from at the last second.
Really? You've got your hands on that?
Yeah. So the answer was going to be every time he tries and sees things from the perspective of an African leader, he just ends up dressing up like one. So, he tries to put themselves in their shoes and ends up actually putting himself in their shoes. Yeah, but it creates its own problem again. He keeps doing it. He can't stop. Yeah. All right. That is it for the start of the show. We'll now go to our interviews and the quiz.
Okay, welcome back to the show. Liberal MP for Goldstein, Tim Wilson. Tim, welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
No worries, mate. So you're in Hong Kong recently, on Monday, in fact, for just 24 hours, speaking at a conference for The Economist magazine. In that time, you also managed to fit in going to the protests in Hong Kong. What's the scene like up there?
Well, like any country or any city where there's protests, the vast bulk of the city is completely relaxed, normal, and people getting on with their lives. But there are flashpoints, and particularly along Gloucester Road between kind of Wan Chai and Causeway Bay on Sunday afternoon, there was a lot of intensity. But the vast majority of protesters are people saying we want to fight for our future, and they want a vote on their future, as well as a whole series of other demands, and we're doing it peacefully because they know that their future is on the line.
That's interesting that you say that it's sort of only at a few flashpoints. How many people are still taking part in the protest, do you reckon?
I don't know the exact numbers, but there were certainly tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands on the weekend. That's obviously not the same as it was a couple of weeks ago where there were about 2 million, but I think people know that it's heating up, and so they've also, the Hong Kong authorities have shut down the train system on the weekend, so it's very hard to get around. If you know Hong Kong, it basically lives off the train system. So I imagine that makes it harder for some people to get around to get to the protest. But it's pretty serious, and these people are on the front line of the contest of two very different worldviews. They've picked the Liberal Democratic side, and I think we have a responsibility to support them.
Now, what was the craziest thing you saw in your time at the protests?
I'm going to say there was nothing particularly crazy. It was the craziest thing was the weather. It was bucketing down with rain, but it didn't deter that many people, and so there were just lots of people with umbrellas, but marching down the streets. I caught the ferry from the Kowloon side over to the Hong Kong Island side, and I saw some kids, with masks who obviously were protesters, but there was this point where somebody shouted out something in Cantonese. I don't know what it was. But then the whole ferry just responded in unison with a response consistent with the protesters' messages, and you realise that this is history being made.
It's a pretty contentious time for Australian politicians on this issue, and I know a few of them aren't too keen to wade into it. So, what made you, actually join the protest, and have you copped any pushback for it?
It is a difficult time, but when you think about the free people on the front line of a choice between two differing worldviews. As a Liberal Democrat, I obviously side with those wanting liberal democracy. And obviously as a backbencher, not as a minister, I don't represent the government. I just basically represent myself and my constituents. And I thought it was the right thing to do. Happy to be held accountable to my constituents about that. But I haven't received any pushback. In fact, it wouldn't surprise that many other Liberal Democrats have probably said that they thought it was, maybe at times courageous, but nonetheless a bold move and one that they supported, because I think people know just how serious the situation is. And when you've got people on the front line of two competing worldviews and they're pushing for the types of values that we believe in, that it's probably a good thing to support them.
Now, we talked earlier in the show about the troubles that NBA and South Park have gotten into regarding China this week. What's your take on that, the balance between, corporates trying to balance their bottom line and doing the right thing? Do you have a view on that?
Well, I just think the NBA is sold out in their capitulation, frankly. And I think it's really disturbing and disgraceful. They're not the first, though. And I think we need to acknowledge that, whereas I much more appreciate South Park's approach, which is to laugh at those censorship, because the one thing that authoritarian regimes can deal with is reasoned debate. What they can't deal with is ridicule for their positions and their behaviour and pointing out the absurdities, that their solution to people are criticising for censorship is censorship. I think humour is a critical part of the political arsenal to fight for the type of world that we want.
Yeah, absolutely. I just like reflecting on the fact that Winnie the Pooh is actually banned in China, just to give you an idea of how thin-skinned totalitarian regimes can be. Now, Pete and I found out about you being in Hong Kong for the protest when you put up an Instagram post about it. And the Instagram post said the last time you were protesting in Hong Kong, you were also wearing a pink polo t-shirt. So what was that protest about? And what is it about pink polos that get you feeling the spirit of the revolution?
The pink polo was just coincidental, but the last time I was in Hong Kong was in 2003 for the WTO ministerial, and I was protesting for free trade and the case for free trade. That was back when the last time trade policy was exciting and interesting. It went through a bit boring period, and now we're back to interesting. I remember the photo clearly, and so I actually just remembered I wore the pink polo, and I just thought it was kind of a way to add to a very serious point, something a bit lighthearted.
So you don't look to the pink polo if you just need a bit of pep in your step on a busy day?
Oh, no, I've been involved in many protests, and many have been sans pink polo.
All right, well, that's good to hear. Now, because nothing anyone ever does can be greeted well on the internet, you've been copying it because you tweeted, "Send in the water cannons" about Occupy Melbourne protesters many years ago. Do you want to explain why Hong Kong protesters are not like Occupy Melbourne protesters?
Well, firstly, that tweet was made in 2011, and I'm going to break it to some people who have obviously lost their sense of humour, like the CCP. It was actually a joke, but, people like to bring it up. I also think it's extraordinary, frankly, that you get all these people who, see me in Hong Kong protesting against an authoritarian regime and the right of people to be able to do basic things like vote, and their response is not to say, "I don't like Tim Wilson, but I agree with him on this." Their first instinct is to try and delegitimise me and do the de facto work of the CCP for them. They're sort of useful idiots of the world. But there is a difference. The Occupy Melbourne protest, and as the Occupy movement, was a group of people who couldn't achieve what they wanted through democratic means, so they chose to occupy public land, and their intention was in perpetuity, till they made their point and everybody came to agree with them. The people who are protesting in Hong Kong are actually protesting for their right to vote. And that's pretty much the base of it. They've got some things about anti-corruption and police brutality and everything else, but that's all very, localised and to do with past issues. That's the sort of fundamental principle, to be able to decide their own future and self-determination.
Yeah, I do like the idea that because they've never done anything to support China themselves, they just look at you and just go, well, how can I bring that down? It's just such a wild thing.
But that's okay. History is replete with useful idiots from the left somehow doing something to either delegitimise opponents of authoritarian regimes in Western liberal democratic countries, and they're just adding their name to the roll call of useful idiots of history.
All right, last question I got. Would you have had more sympathy for the Occupy Melbourne protesters had they been wearing pink polos?
Look, I think the pink polo is a bit too cool for school for the Occupy movement. And the truth is I actually have some sympathy with aspects of what they were trying to achieve, because some of their criticism was right about the unaccountability of people who'd done the wrong thing and bank bailouts, and philosophically I have some sympathies with that. But I also don't believe that you just get to disobey the law, because we operate in a society of laws, have to have some respect for the rights and freedoms of others for people to be able to live their life, and that's what they weren't interested in doing. And around that time I sent out that tweet, and because I remember it very clearly, they were basically being arrested because I think they'd been in that space for about 2 weeks, and there were allegations, particularly overseas, of nefarious conduct that were going on in Occupy sites, and there was actually a very credible reason to deal with what was becoming increasingly a public health / public order issue.
All right, brilliant. Tim Wilson, it's so awesome seeing an Australian politician take to the streets in Hong Kong. Thank you for doing that, and thanks for coming back on the show.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, we now welcome on Vale Sloane, the Associate Director for Institute Relations at Atlas Network. Vale, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, mate. Good to be here.
Now, Val, Atlas is a very influential think tank. It's a really influential organisation. So which organ is Atlas in the vast right-wing conspiracy? Are you the heart, the stomach? Are you maybe a kidney?
Mate, we kind of see ourselves as happy warriors, you know what I mean? I'm not sure what organ that'd be exactly. Maybe the soul? I don't know. But, we really see ourselves as the ones who are just trying to fight the good fight when it comes to free people, free markets, you know?
Yeah, well, let's get into that. Do we think the soul exists? No, just kidding, Vale. I wouldn't ask you that. So I should point out that Vale is in Washington, D.C., despite his Aussie accent. We're live with Washington. Now, what is the Atlas Network, and how does it help liberty around the world?
Yeah, mate, we're a group that works to strengthen the worldwide freedom movement. And we do that through working with just under 500 independent think tank organizations worldwide. I'm talking over 90 countries. And the one thing that unites all of these groups is that they're fighting for free markets and individual liberty. And we really see our job as a bit of a service organization almost, where we invest in their projects through grants, train them up through our Atlas Leadership Academy, where we provide practical skills to think tank leaders, and we celebrate their success through different events and forums in which we can discuss strategies to make the world a better place.
One thing I really love that Atlas do is the project doing development differently and how it approaches poverty solutions. So how do we solve poverty?
Mate, you took the words out of my mouth, because you're actually tapped on something really interesting we're doing right now. Through our Doing Development Differently campaign, we're working with think tanks on the ground in countries where it can be pretty tough to get by, and show that local solutions and free markets are how we can get people out of poverty. In fact, our president, Matt Warner, is just about to release a book, Poverty and Freedom, Case Studies on Global Economic Development. And this looks at 13 different examples from groups within our network that have fought against government abuse, fought against closed markets, and as a result helped people, escape the poverty trap, become entrepreneurs, be able to access education and schools. It's pretty inspiring stuff.
I love, Matt, Vale. I love the Doing Development Differently program. I've written about it for the IPA review. What are some of the big success stories specifically of the program?
Yeah, definitely. One that I really love is in Argentina, our partner Libertad y Progreso managed to help wind back an electronics tariff, which meant that computers, laptops, iPads that could have gone to young kids in schools just weren't getting through because the price was so ridiculously artificially high. So they pointed this out through videos, a really interesting newspaper campaign, and the government said, hey, you know what? You're right. This is a really bad idea. And they just scrapped the tariff and managed to get these electronics into the hands of kids to help advance their learning. Another one that's really exciting to us is in India, our partner, the Centre for Civil Society, managed to scrap the minimum capital requirement for starting a business, which can sound a bit dry, but basically meant these poor business people couldn't officially start a business unless they had a whole lot of money saved up, which just wasn't a reality for a lot of people. So they managed to convince the government to scrap that and let entrepreneurs take a punt and start their own business, whether it's a street stall or, IT company, education providers. And as a result, it's really helped unleash this entrepreneurial spirit that the government was stepping on in India. So, mate, I could talk your ear off all this podcast on all the good success stories we're seeing from partners. But the thing is, it's fighting against poverty, and it's in the local context of each of these countries.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up South America, because that's where I think Atlas is doing some really awesome work. Now, I was actually at an Atlas conference in Sydney a few months ago, and my roommate for the conference was from Venezuela, and he was telling us what Atlas is able to do with some of the free market think tanks in Venezuela. I didn't even think there were allowed to be free market think tanks in Venezuela, but they're going. Do you want to talk about Do you want to talk about how Atlas is helping Venezuelans?
Yeah, I'd love to, mate. I'm quite proud to be involved with the Center for Latin America, which is an initiative we run at Atlas Network to specifically help our partners in Latin America. There's over 80 groups across the region that we work with. But specifically in Venezuela, mate, there's no sugarcoating it. It's a bloody dire situation, when we get reports in from friends and allies on the ground, hell, you just have to turn on the news and see the terrible state on the ground there. It's really confronting. So really what we're trying to do is support those people who are still fighting for free markets and free people. Fight the good fight when it's a dark situation. That's through things like research. They're working on education campaigns, trying to educate the next generation of young people and students still in Venezuela, and make sure that they know that a better future exists. It doesn't always have to be like this. And, putting the safety of our partners first is the main thing. And I think the thing that really inspires me about it is that these are independent groups. We don't control them in any way, and they are just fighting for these ideas. So we'll do everything we can to back them. But to see this organic groundswell of fighting for freedom in Venezuela, it's hard not to be a bit humbled by that.
Exactly right. So I think one of the positive spin-offs of stuff like Doing Development Differently and the work that Atlas does is that conservatives and libertarians can mount a really good critique of the normal foreign aid status quo, but we haven't really been able to put forward a very credible alternative. But I feel like this is a credible alternative, the idea that a few minor changes or major changes to regulation can lift hundreds of thousands or large numbers of people out of poverty. Do you see that as a spin-off of the good work these organisations are doing, a really good alternative for libertarians to put forward?
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. I really think, honestly, it's par the course for what we all stand for. I mean, the data backs us up. Capitalism's lifted hundreds of millions, billions of people out of poverty over the last few decades, and these are locally grown solutions. This isn't multinational aid organizations or different governments coming in and waving their finger at quote-unquote poor people saying, oh, you know, you're doing it wrong, just listen to us. Not at all. This is us saying, hey, we know people on the ground who understand how local markets work, how people are going to do business, and they want to unleash that. And I think a really good thing that, I'd want to bring up is as part of our Poverty and Freedom video series, which you can see on our YouTube page, the Atlas Network YouTube page, has over 5 million views for our videos, which show people on the ground in India, Costa Rica, soon to be Ukraine, people who are benefiting from getting out of poverty through free market access and the ability to just live their own lives. It's kind of as simple as that in the end. When you give people a chance to flourish, they're going to take it,
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess this next question would be for you and Peter, because I know both of you worked on this area for so long.
Ooh,
but what are like the central building blocks you would look for in a new society if you were to if you came to a society that did have a lot of poverty? What would be the central building blocks that governments should be taking on rather than just foreign aid?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, mate, and it's obviously the $1 million question. I think what we've experienced, and it's great working with our President Matt Warner on his work to investigate this very thing, is that it's almost death by 1,000 cuts for entrepreneurs in a lot of these places. Whether it's the fees, the registration costs, the waiting periods, the bribes that can be levied on them, it just saps the spirit, and it definitely drains the wallet. So a big thing is trying to make procedures as simple and transparent and as quick as possible. To do that really then enables entrepreneurs to get on with the job of what they do best, like being business people. I think that's the biggest building block that comes to mind in terms of what the government can do, almost just get out of the way. And I think additionally, things that people who want to help need to do is listen to the people on the ground. Like, what are the problems? What isn't working? Because I guarantee you that, what the challenges facing Nepal are not the same as the challenges in Venezuela, and not the same challenges as Lithuania. It's a matter of looking at what local entrepreneurs, no matter how successful the country is, what are their challenges and what can we do to fix it? And, they have to be the ones to drive that change. Coming in as an outsider is in a lot of ways the worst thing you can do, and can just antagonize people against undertaking any sort of reform, So that kind of foundational respect is also really important.
I agree with that, and I'd add to that, the thing that I like about doing development differently is its incremental approach. If you think, I've done work in Cambodia and South Africa and other places, and if you think, hey, property rights are a really good thing, you can't just drop them into a context where they've got no cultural history. That just won't work. And you can't just, fight corruption in a place where corruption's been a way of doing business for thousands of years. But the thing about doing development differently. So
you'd say it's like a 24-hour. You can't fix it in 24 hours.
You can't fix it in 24, maybe not even 2 days, James. Wow. But the thing about doing development differently is it takes these tiny little incremental changes that are manageable, and it's sort of quantified the fact that actually a little change like that makes a huge difference. And then maybe another little change makes a huge difference as well. So it kind of gives you a way of getting around that, reality that you can't change these institutions that we've got in the West overnight.
Because you do feel like foreign aid, like there is some sort of approach where it's just like, if I just sign a big enough check and deposit it, then I can just walk away and know I've done great.
Yeah, exactly. But even with the way we think about development, with property rights and the legal system and stuff, they just don't spring up overnight. But this gives a sort of a bite-sized chunk that we can work on.
Yeah, cool. So
absolutely, I couldn't put it better myself. Yeah.
Sweet. So Val, we talked about South America. We've talked about India. What part of the world do you reckon is the next big success story that's just primed to really, just explode economically?
Mate, I got to tell you, I'm really bullish on Africa. I just came back in August from our Africa Liberty Forum 2019, which was held in Nairobi, Kenya, and we had dozens of countries, Francophone Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, you name it. We had people there, young people, and they're just excited, and there's a lot of push in Africa to address institutional problems, economic problems, and create a better, people are saying on the really inspiring panel. You know, we have to take charge. We have to build our change. It's not about aid organisations. It's not about looking to blame people or find excuses. We have to create the institutions and the societies that we want. I got to tell you, I'm really excited. Partners there are doing amazing work. You know, in Cote d'Ivoire, we have a partner who's working on land that's been recognised by the World Bank. You know, we've also got partners in Morocco who are helping ease the doing of business through the huge trading ports they have there. And in South Africa, I was also there, where they're helping restore land rights to black South Africans that were ripped away under the apartheid government. So, you know, it's hard not to look at Africa and think there's some really good stuff happening. And I got to say, I'm watch this space, mate. I'm really proud of what our partners are doing, and I love that Atlas Network can do a bit to support them.
That's right, Val. And of course, listeners to the Young IPA podcast would remember when we interviewed Linda Kavuka from Kenya, a big part of the African liberty movement. One more question for you, Vale. There are a certain group of countries, and you said it a little bit earlier, there are a certain group of countries that are kind of stuck at the bottom of the pile. Venezuela would be an example of that, but places like Eritrea, for example, these are countries that, you know, they're not sort of lower middle income earners. They're right on the bottom. Do you have any partners in those countries, and do they face unique challenges that your other partners don't face, or do they have different policy aims, or what kind of stuff do they have to deal with?
Yeah, well, yes and yes is the answer to that question, mate. Yes, we do have partners in some really difficult countries, Venezuela being one. We have a great partner in Burundi, which really has a tough situation when you look at things like the Economic Freedom of the World Index. I think of other places as well, like, Nepal is still a very difficult country on the economic data, but we have, I think, at least two great partners there, not to mention a number of groups that are coming up. So we do try and work in countries that have a lot of difficult circumstances. And yes, I think they do have a lot of challenges that can be unique, but they can also, learn from other people in the worldwide freedom movement. You know, governments can be corrupt anywhere. Institutions can fail to work properly anywhere, and it's a matter of looking at, well, what are some solutions that have helped alleviate these problems elsewhere? And time again, it's things like transparency, accountability of officials, limiting government overreach, and just making it easy to get on with life, whether that's not following onerous laws, whether it's quickly setting up a business. And so that's why things like our regional Liberty Forums and upcoming Liberty Forum and Freedom Dinner in New York are so important, because we get hundreds of leaders from around the worldwide liberty movement in a room, and we say, hey, what's working? What's not working? Like, what can we learn from each other? And get on with the job, mate. None of this kumbaya business. We got a world to, make better.
Yeah, that Liberty Forum dinner in Washington, we had some IPA people there a few years ago, and they came back so full of energy about wanting to approach the task, because it's like they just said, it's so incredible to see like the worldwide freedom movement just in one room together.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And I got to tell you, I've always got a soft spot for the IPA being, a bit of, you can't take the Australia out of the boy, right? I may have been here for a few years, but I love what you're all doing down back home, and we all watch it keenly at Atlas Network. So, we thank you guys for everything you've done to, keep fighting the good fight in Australia, and actually, be an inspiration for a lot of our partners. If I had $1 every time a partner from a country that's doing it more tough than a place like Australia says, gee, I'm glad that there are Atlas Network partners in the UK, in Australia, in the US, and Canada, because, we can fight fights and support them and make sure that we're all pulling together as a team.
Yeah, cool. Val, thanks so much for your time. I love talking to someone from Atlas, because Atlas organization, one of those places where, like the media cycle is just, what did Trump tweet recently, or what's the latest with, this politician. And then you like talk to someone from Atlas and you're like, oh, actually there's amazingly important things happening around the world and millions of people are coming out of poverty. And Atlas is just one of those organizations that makes you go, oh, hang on, there's huge victories. So, Val, thank you so much for your time.
I couldn't put it better, yeah.
Thank
Val. You, fellas. You have a great day. Appreciate it.
Okay, welcome to another round of Hey, What Did We Miss? The Young IPA quiz, loaded quiz panel coming up. Are they panelists or contestants?
Contestants,
would
yeah,
probably be the right word. Yeah, so loaded quiz contestants. So a friend of the show, Adam Schlitt.
G'day.
Slicked?
I take anything.
Yeah, okay, good.
Backed by popular demand.
Backed by popular demand.
Yeah.
Morgan Begg, very much an easier surname to pronounce. And, of course, reigning champion, the Roof Seal, Peter Gregory. So if it is your first quiz, 1 point for correct answers, 1 point off for incorrect answers.
Is this a current affairs sort of arrangement?
News and current affairs.
Just give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, you'll need it. You'll need that paper. That's all I did for research.
Can I point out that it's Morgan's dressed up, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, Morgan's bought a suit to this for the people listening, and it's intimidating. And to be honest, Pete was talking some incredible trash all morning about how he's going to absolutely blitz the competition.
I'm not worried at all by either of these two blokes.
So you don't find the full suit intimidating. All right, and for buzzers, we're just going to be using first names. So Adam, I can do that. Morgan, and Pete.
Roof.
The Roof Seal.
Come on, quiz time.
Let's go.
All right, I like the energy. All right, so question 1. Dr. Bella Debrera wrote about a university program called Future Fix's key theme of resurgent racism this week. Which university?
Roof. University of Sydney.
University of Sydney is the
Blokes.
host of Future Fix.
Gotta be quick.
Living up
Just to warm up. He's working the bugs out.
Yeah. So we go to ipa.org.au for that article. Which former ABC presenter's first lecture to RMIT talked about how the Liberal Party is now...
Barry Cassidy.
Oh, Pete is storming away.
As if the Liberal Party is far right.
I think Barry
Morrison's
Cassidy's
barely even a conservative.
Yeah, exactly. I think Barry Cassidy is just, wanting to get a few retweets. He's in the university. He's got to appeal to the youth. So if you just say Liberal Party's far right, anything's far right to the right about Barry Cassidy, I got to say.
Barry.
All right. So under contentious circumstances, who won the NRL Grand Final on the weekend? Adam.
Roosters. Sydney?
Where are they from?
Sydney Roosters.
Yeah, Sydney Roosters. I'll give it. I don't understand rugby rules at all, but apparently it was contentious.
People were angry about it.
Zach Gorman was absolutely ropeable.
Yeah, I heard all 57 fans in the stadium were apoplectic.
I think the crowd was 82,000. But Zach was also disappointed that there was no Tui's New in his local bottle shop.
Yes, I saw that angry Facebook post. Had a few words to say about Melbourne. In the IPA's new video, How the Enlightenment Came to Australia, once again, go to ipa.org.au. Who was the most read economic philosopher by Australian colonists?
Well, that's a good question.
It is a very good question.
And
I was
that
quite
was
proud of myself. Dr. Bella Debrera
starring
again.
as usual.
Yes, in the quiz and on our website.
I can have a guess, but I don't want to lose a point.
Morgan.
All right, Morgan?
Adam Smith.
Adam Smith is correct. All right, so score check.
Like Karl Marx or...
Have a bit more faith in our forefathers.
Adam Smith is fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Score check. We've got Pete on 2, Morgan on 1, and Adam on 1. No one's got an incorrect answer yet.
I'm really skittish about getting the wrong answer.
Yeah, you don't want to be the first person because they'll come down on you like a ton of bricks.
You lose a point.
You lose a point and my respect.
Yeah, that's it.
You can talk amongst yourselves about which one's more of a thing. All right. In November last year, the New South Wales government promised 900 schools would receive funding for air conditioning. Now, as of today, according to the Sydney Morning Herald, how many have it? No points off, closest to gets it.
Okay, so closest to the pin.
Closest to the pin. 900 schools were promised.
When did they say?
They said November last year, they just said 900 schools are getting funding.
It'd be 71.
Morgan.
71?
I haven't seen this story, but I'll say 0.
0?
I'm going to go 50.
50. Closest to is Adam. It's 27. So only 2 off.
Jeez.
The 27 schools. Come on.
It's not a lot.
700.
At the very least, I should have said 5.
They would have put it in 1. They would have the closest one to the parliament.
Yeah, closest one to the parliament, the one with the most kids in the school of politicians. All right, so we're recording this on Monday. So today, which is Monday, but for the people listening, it's 3 days ago. So, but for the purposes of this, today is the 18th anniversary of which nation invading which nation? Actually, who got the last one? I forgot. You got it? Yeah.
I got the last one. And that'd be Roof.
Yep.
America invading Iraq.
Not Iraq. Point off.
Morgan. Afghanistan.
Oh, you're such a spud, Peter. That is basic. I was like...
That's not great.
Damn it.
All right. So, score check. Adam and Morgan on 2 each. Peter is down to 1. Absolute reversal of fortunes.
I'll still win this.
All right. Which political figure on Sunday gave Boris Johnson a 1-week deadline to revise his Brexit plan?
Ooh.
Very public.
Didn't
audio
catch
quiz.
This
Got
one. As I'm speaking.
Sorry.
Telling me to speak as I speak. Yeah.
I'm just seeing that Pete's really lifting up. If the other two want to speak out loud.
Don't know. Absolutely don't know. Absolutely no. Wait, obviously I can have a punt.
Oh,
I in no way,
Mexican
shape, or form know
standoff.
the answer to this question.
Absolute Mexican standoff right now. All right, time's up.
Yep.
Oh,
No, I got no one.
okay. Time's up. It was Emmanuel Macron.
Okay, I wouldn't have
And,
said that.
if Macron gets
Wasn't
angry
my
with
guess.
you, time to start.
What does he
acting.
get to decide?
Well, because like he's a
extraordinary.
big player in the EU. He's like this Brexit deal won't fly.
Just stop tweeting fake photos, mate.
Good.
If you're listening.
Get him. All right. Next question. Who did Alexander Downer have drinks with that may have started the whole Roof?
Oh, crikey.
Oh no,
like-
you're gonna lose the point.
George Papadopoulos.
Is correct.
Yes.
Good one.
I knew. Yeah.
Okay, and that was the drinks that started off the Mueller report investigation, maybe. But
One gin and tonic they had each.
One,
Wow.
really?
Our
Are you
meeting.
there?
Oh, this is
There's a few searching questions the US people would want to asking Peter if he knows this much about the drinks.
one gin and tonic in an hour.
Ooh, bit slow. Come on, mate.
Can't.
keep it
Had a
up.
lot to talk about.
All right. Which US presidential candidate claimed she was fired from a teaching job for being visibly pregnant, but a surfaced video from 2008 has that same presidential candidate saying she was fired because she wasn't qualified?
I just read this. Forgot her name.
I don't know.
I would say so is most of the American public.
Okay, so that's a hint.
Morgan.
Morgan.
Is it that Marianne
No,
Williamson?
I wish.
Yeah.
I wish. I think she's
it just seems
withdrawn.
right up her
She's my
alley.
favourite.
Yeah, as much as I do like Tulsi Gabbard, Marianne Williamson was like, if she was the candidate, that would have been perfect. It's not. Marianne Williamson, that's a point off for Morgs. Anyone want to take a stab?
No, I don't want to take a stab. I want to hold on to
Yeah,
my
no, it's not worth
All right,
it.
I will say she's also got a history of faking things to get.
roof. Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, I'll give it to you.
That was a big hint.
It was a big hint.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look at Adam's about to
You
whack
know what?
it.
I think everyone's just about to give up. So, do I give it to Pete?
I would say don't give it to me.
I
That
would
made it
say
too
good.
obvious.
Okay, so we're at the
I'm a
Who
fair
Am I?
player.
We're at the Who Am I? Pete is on 2, Morgan is on 1, Adam is on 2. So anyone can win.
Anyone can win.
I'm
This is
banking on
also-
Pete stuffing it up and losing it.
Oh, here we go.
the hunter becomes the hunted. I like it.
That's a big old target on Pete. All right, Who Am I? Today, again, Monday, not Thursday or whenever you're listening to this, but Monday when we're recording. Today is my 66th birthday.
Oh,
5 points.
and yeah, I don't know.
Yep. Anyone want to make a stab at the 5-pointer?
No.
For an absolute walk-off? Morgan is
I am.
Morgan had the most
We got
furrowed
the-
brow in the history of furrowed
I'm glad we got a
brows.
recording of that because that was intense.
All right. Question 4. I've been president of my country on 2 separate occasions.
Oh, crikey. President of my country.
Could be any
No,
country
this one.
Could be.
that has a presidency.
Yeah, very good,
It's a
James.
stipulation.
Don't know, mate.
Yeah.
All right. So down to 3. My parents' names are Vladimir and Maria.
Roof.
Roof.
Vladimir Putin.
It is Vladimir. Yeah. Again, the champion. Getting a bit of a win streak happening now, Pete.
I just think, the quiz is something you have to get used to.
Yeah.
And doing it every week gives me an advantage.
I'm
Gives you
surprised
selection.
Dad is 66 years old. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Did you think older or younger?
I would have thought younger.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I would have thought about 66.
Well,
Right
why'd you
on.
say it? Why'd you say it at the 5-pointer?
I didn't think of it
Clearly
until
said
you
it was 66 years old.
The fact that
Should
his
have
dad's
tweeted,
name-
who do I think 66?
His dad's name's Vladimir and his mum's name's...
Maria.
Maria doesn't know her name. But Vladimir definitely knows. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, sweet. So that is it for the quiz. We've got more show coming up after this.
Awesome.
Okay, congratulations again, Pete.
I think it's starting to become a bit of a problem, this.
This is becoming a bit of a
We're going
dynasty.
to have to invent some new rules to keep me from winning.
All right.
Oh, I should point out, actually, in the quiz, when Bolt says colonists, I actually thought he said economists.
Yeah.
That's why I was suggesting all our colonists would read Karl Marx, because all our economists probably do. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, and people were wondering.
Yeah, people were wondering. Stop bagging the...
If
first
anyone's
settlers.
still listening to the show after that absolute debacle of a travesty,
Yeah, no, sorry about
then
that,
we have
folks.
the Pete's official apology.
Yeah.
All right. A slightly less contentious apology than Daryl Morey's one for Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Standing up for Hong Kong.
Similar, though.
All right. Let's get into segments. Now, we want to start off with the Here's a Cool Thing.
Yeah.
So, Pete, talk us through it.
Well, this is a segment we've done a few times, usually in relation to stuff that's happened in the developing world. It's been a really cool development. It's, as a bit of an antidote to all the negative news that we hear these days. So it's a segment called Here's a Cool Thing. Now, it's a bit different this week because it's not in the developing world, but it's in the United States on the weekend. Earlier this week, talk show host Ellen DeGeneres, everyone knows who Ellen is, said this on Tuesday.
Here's the the thing. I'm friends with George Bush. In fact, I'm friends with a lot of people who don't share the same beliefs that I have. We're all different, and I think that we've forgotten that that's okay that we're all different. For instance, I wish people wouldn't wear fur. I don't like it, but I'm friends with people who wear fur. And I'm friends with people who are furry, as a matter of fact. I have friends who should tweeze more. And but just because I don't agree with someone on everything doesn't mean that I'm not going to be friends with them. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people that think the same way that you do. I mean be kind to everyone. Doesn't matter.
Now, what she's talking about is Ellen attended a Dallas Cowboys versus Green Bay Packers match over the weekend, where she was a guest of the Dallas owners, and she was seated next to former US President George W. Bush. Now, so not a complicated one here. You know, it's not a big elaborate point. It's just saying, as Ellen says, you know, you can sit next to, you can be friends with someone you disagree with, and you can respect people that you disagree with. And if there's a little bit more of that in the world, James, we'd be better off.
And and you can also like sit next to someone for 3 hours at a football game without
and be
like
civilized.
Yeah, and be civilized.
Yeah.
Like that's all we need.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just that.
Exactly right. And she's, of course, famously a California liberal. Like
and she's gay, and like people were saying, oh, but George Bush had anti-gay policies. Like you've taken a very optimistic view of this, and good on Ellen. But I have a slightly more pessimistic view because I did the mistake of like scrolling down on Twitter and just seeing the replies, and it is toxic. It was mostly critical of Ellen. People being like, "Yep, that sounds about white." As in, like, you know, if you're a person of color, you wouldn't be behaving like this. Or I'm too rich for George Bush to care about to care about George Bush's legacy. That kind of stuff. Like this, you know, when people go like, "Oh, conservatives do this too." How many people have like asked George Bush to apologize for sitting next to Ellen? Like it's literally one-sided people saying Ellen should apologize for sitting next to George Bush. Like that is where discourse is at the moment.
Yeah, look, I'll take your point, but you shouldn't mistake Twitter for the real world.
Yes, I should.
Twitter is a very sort of thin thing, and you know most people don't care.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I didn't do that. Okay, I got another story. This one coming out of the UK. Now, UK, as people who've been listening to this show, or you know, people who just following the news know, UK got a bit of a knife crime problem.
They do,
and it's growing and it's not going away. So there's been a whole lot of ideas as to how to combat that. Here's one for you. This is a open letter signed by the Diocese of I'm not a very religious person. Yep. Is it Diocese?
Yep.
Diocese of Rochester, signed by church leaders, lawmakers, psychiatrists, academics, and the like. We are the undersigned and professionals, community leaders from across the UK, calling on the government to see the sale of pointed domestic kitchen knives as a thing of the past. Historically, we needed a point on the end of our knife to pick up food because forks weren't invented. Now we only need the point to open packets when we can't be bothered finding the scissors.
Bit of humour.
It's a strong claim.
Yeah.
It's a big idea.
It is a big idea.
Bold strategy.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Well, look, so this is the Church of England, right?
Yeah.
So call me old-fashioned, and I'm no theologian, James, but the role of religion is to what's the word? Like
bring you closer to God.
Bring you closer to God, but to like cure the souls of people committing these crimes.
Yeah.
Like you're meant to help people who are troubled or whatever it is. You're not meant to suggest public policy.
Yeah.
And especially not public policy like this.
Public policy this silly.
Yeah, exactly. So just concentrate on the souls.
Yeah. Just concentrate on the souls.
Is that too much to ask?
No, I don't think it is too much to ask. My takes were, you take my laziness to find the scissors from my cold dead hands.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that gets me through the day is looking at like my unopened packet of bacon and going like, I could find the scissors or stabby stab.
I know that drives you crazy.
Yeah. And like the other part is like, even if you take out the point, knives are still sharp.
Oh yeah, that's
unless you're just going like, okay, we're now going to cut steaks with clubs. Yeah. Like knives will still be sharp. People will find a way. Like they literally just have to angle the knife slightly differently, and the problem still exists.
Just flick of the wrist. So, yeah.
Hey, you know, you know a lot about the old knifey knife.
I absolutely do not, but that solves nothing.
Exactly. All right. Another story we want to get to. So this is coming out of the UK as well. Now, Jeremy Corbyn put up an interesting tweet and video, and we want to play it right now.
Thousands of people all across the country are gearing up for an election. They're gearing up for an election because they want to change the country.
So that is the voice of Jeremy Corbyn. And if for people who are listening and not watching, that is overlaid on a bunch of people that are supposedly out to vote Labor. There's like lines around the block.
Yep.
You literally stopped them having an election. Like you, Jeremy Corbyn, not you, Pete. I know I'm looking at you. But right. Jeremy Corbyn literally stopped people from having an election. Yeah. You can't get on your high horse about how ready you are for one.
He was the first opposition leader in history to reject the opportunity to have an election.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
It's something makes you think
history.
That's going to come back to bite him over the course of the coming election, which is surely coming.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all that needs. But just like you you literally did stop them doing that.
Exactly
Stop gearing up and give them one.
And if you watch that video in full, you will become a little bit dizzy because he goes around the block of that line of people, and I dead set got a bit sick. Anyway, just a note. All right, last story of the day, then you can get on with your lives.
Just work a conflict claim.
Yeah, I should actually speak to Andy. Anyway, last one of the day. All right, so real estate website Domain reported during.
Don't say Pete doesn't care about you, listeners out there. Pete is willing to experience motion sickness to give you the takes that you deserve.
Stop saying that, everyone. So Domain real estate website reported last week that, and I quote, lenders are scrutinising suggestive jokes appearing in the bank statements of prospective home buyers, potentially causing delays to their mortgage applications. For example, instead of labelling the transaction as dinner, they may describe the funds as for sexual services or illicit drugs. Now, what this means is when you and your mates go out for dinner, someone covers it on their card and you hit them back with an EFT transfer, don't write coke and hookers.
Yep.
Because that may delay their home loan in the future.
Yes.
So that's an unbelievable.
And you can do better than that one. Like, there's so much more inventive ones you can do.
What other ones can you do, James?
Well, like the one I do for literally pretty much every time I have to transfer money to anyone in my life, it will be under for being so sexy. So, like, I don't care who it is, and nearly I've paid my rent money doing that to my landlord.
So down the track, down the track, your mates are sitting in a bank, you know, across the desk from someone who's a loan officer.
Yeah.
And you're like, so this transaction for being sexy, what's that about?
They could just lean back and just go, you're looking at it.
Pretty self-explanatory, I would have thought.
What else do you need?
Anyway, I've done
I'm in trouble.
This is why the whole property market slowed down, because literally every transaction that you make to your mates, you sort of have a bit of fun.
Like literally, I want to point out two things here. So Treasurer Josh Frydenberg last week warned against lenders becoming too stringent in enforcing responsible lending rules. Josh gets it. I just want that on the record. Josh gets it. Josh knows that when the bill comes, that is prime comedy time.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
The other part of this, overuse of Uber and Uber Eats has been cited as a reason to knock back mortgage applicants, with banks also wary of other debts, gambling habits, and subscription services such as Netflix.
Yeah.
I will literally never own a home.
Yeah.
I think at this point, banks will stop me even casually looking at auction signs as I walk by on the street.
Yeah.
Like, that is how screwed I am.
So you appear to have made the same transaction every half an hour for 6 hours on Saturday night. What's going on? Well, what do you reckon's going on,
What
mate?
do you reckon?
And look,
what is this Uber Eats order of McDonald's at 7:48 in the morning?
Yeah.
What do you reckon it is?
And look, this is all on the back of the the regulators, what's it called, cracking down, and the Royal Commission we had last year into financial services.
All right, cool.
Which is the political angle.
Very, very interesting, serious
should just
political
be how much
point
money you have. You should be able
to
to get
end
a
the
loan.
show.
Yeah.
We could have ended it on the funny, but no, and Pete's got to get political. All right, that is it for the show this week. Thank you to Tim Wilson and Vale Sloane. Head on down to Stand Up for Nuclear. Get involved with Atlas. Support Tim in his efforts to support Hong Kong. And we'll see you guys next. Oh, yeah. And don't forget to, leave us a 5-star review if you're listening through iTunes. Helps us out with the rankings.
Tell your mates.
Tell your mates about the show. We're now on YouTube. So subscribe if you like watching a podcast through YouTube, or if you have friends who watch podcasts through YouTube. Now, see you guys next week.
See ya.